What if you trained your whole life to stop a nuclear bomb, but you got hit by a car instead, so you died, but you wake up in a new world and have the power to stop a f***ing nuke? The story begins as a girl wakes up from her nap, but she smells f***ing terrible, so she takes a shower before getting ready for school. Her name is Akane Nishino, and she prepares to leave her house, but she hesitates, and suddenly a past memory freezes her, but she summons up her courage to leave as her driver calls out her name, making her escape the memories of the nightmare she once lived. He drives her to her school. However, as soon as Akane steps out of the car, her personality changes to a cheerful girl, and we see that Akane is a popular girl who is liked by all her classmates. She walks to the lockers when she sees Kajino, an average student with an easily forgettable personality, but there is something about him that makes Akane secretly despise him. She greets him, and Kajino greets her, but calls her Nishimura instead of Nishino, so Akane keeps up her fake smile and reminds him her name is not Nishimura. Kajino is surprised, saying he is really good at remembering NPCs' names, so he blames his lack of sleep for the mistake. Akane is disgusted that he has been sitting next to her in the class for almost 3 months now, yet he has made no effort to remember her name, but he finally apologizes, and this time, calls her Nishitani. Akane tries not to lose her shit, silently cursing him, but she politely corrects him, saying her name is Nishino, but Kajino again calls her Nishimura as he leaves. Akane is on the verge of killing this motherfucker, but she stops and takes a deep breath to calm herself down. She stares at Kajino as he leaves, thinking that he didn't look at her once while they were talking, and the times he did, it seemed as if he wasn't looking at her, but at some far-off place, so she decides she truly despises him. But Akane refuses to let this bother her, so she goes about her day, talking to everybody in her class. However, when she is alone, the ghosts of her past haunt her, reminding Akane of the scandal that forced her to take a break from show business. Ever since the incident, she changed, hiding behind a fake smile to get by. She's a teacher's pet so the teachers would like her, she's nice to her classmates so they all like her, and she even subscribed to my channel, making sure that no one will hate her. That evening, Akane's driver is late, so she calls him, but when he doesn't pick up her call, she decides to walk back home, unaware that some shady-ass men beat the shit out of her driver. It is the first time after the incident that she is walking home, and she thought she would be more nervous, but suddenly she feels someone following her, so she turns around as a giant man appears and chases her. She tries to run, screaming, "Not again," but her way is blocked by a car as another man gets out to sedate her. She starts losing consciousness, but she sees Kajino watching from far away, though she can't scream for help, so she soon loses consciousness. Akane wakes up, but she finds herself in a dirty warehouse with her hands and feet tied, and her mouth stuffed with a cloth. She spots her kidnappers sitting near her, and one of them laughs, addressing her as the daughter of the head of the Nishino Corporation. The giant man asks her to stay still until the ransom money arrives, but poor excuse for a gangster wants to have a good time with her before they let her go, but she struggles, so he slaps her and reminds her about the incident when her stalker kidnapped her. Akane struggles as the man starts opening her clothes, when they suddenly hear heavy thuds on the roof. They stare at the glass ceiling, when suddenly a man breaks through the window, baffling the kidnappers. Knockoff gangster asks the man who he is, so the man introduces himself as the stylish slayer, but it's really Kajino. The men quickly draw their guns, but Kajino throws glass shards at the kidnapper's hand, knocking away his gun. The sleazy man tries to recover, but Kajino lifts him in the air, slamming the man on the ground and smashing his face. The giant man realizes Kajino is no joke, unlike my life, so puts away his gun. He prepares for physical combat, saying he has been itching for a real fight since he was kicked out of the army. The giant brings out a knife and manages to slice through Kajino's flesh, but Kajino uses a crowbar to block the attack and knocks away the knife from the giant's hand. But the giant lands a kick on Kajino, making Kajino lose his cool, so he decides to teach the giant a lesson. Using his crowbars, he smashes the giant's hand while he casually explains how useful crowbars are in a fight. The giant realizes Kajino is the infamous Balaclava Berserker, a man who has been fighting biker gangs with a crowbar, so he goes for his gun, but Kajino stops the giant and breaks the man's legs, continuing to beat him up until the man is barely alive. Kajino walks towards Akane with a knife, frightening her, but he cuts the ropes and asks her to be more careful while walking home. He quickly disappears, but once outside, he curses himself for how badly he fought against the ex-soldier. Meanwhile, Akane calls the police, and her father pulls some strings to keep the incident from going public. The next day, Akane goes to school like nothing happened. She sees Kajino and greets him, so he greets her back, but he surprisingly gets her name right. She is about to correct him when she realizes he got her name right, and this time, she feels he is actually looking at her. She stays there after Kajino has left, thinking how Kajino is similar to her, since he also hides behind a mask, but the next day, a news broadcast states that Minoru Kajino was truck-hooned and didn't survive. In a flashback, we learn that Kajino wanted to become a hero, but as he grew up, his passion for becoming a hero set him apart from other kids who grew out of it, but Kajino spent his days training in multiple martial arts to become stronger. At school, he was a background character, but behind his mask, he gave his all for his dream. However, one day he got overwhelmed, thinking that it's pointless if his human body can't stop bullets or a nuclear bomb. But as he was thinking, Truck-kun claimed another victim. However, even as his physical body died, his mind remained determined to overcome human limits, and just as he had dreamt, Kajino was reincarnated in a new world of magic where he formed an organization that saves lives from the shadows, the Eminence in Shadow. After dying in the truck incident, Kajino is reborn as the son of Baron Kajinu, an aristocrat. The Baron gives him the name Sid, and Sid realizes he has magic powers as he sees people around him glowing. The Kajinu family is known for training dark knights, so the family has high hopes for their heir to the family, but the heir isn't Sid, it is Claire Kajinu, Sid's older sister, so Sid is f***ing hyped since he can continue to remain a background character hidden under his sister's shadow. However, at night, he reveals his true self and eliminates bandits. One night, he is busy fighting bandits and easily takes them out using his slime suit, which allows him to transform his body into any weapon. He mercilessly kills the thugs and starts collecting their loot, when he hears a noise coming out of a cage. He looks inside, finding an ugly creature that is rotting away, but Sid thinks that the creature might be possessed, so he touches the creature and he feels an overload of magic, confirming his suspicions. Sid decides to keep Bleep Blob Bloop and use its body to experiment, and a month later, Sid has finally succeeded in containing the magical overload, as the blob transforms into a beautiful female elf. He doesn't know what to do, but suddenly he gets an idea, and when the girl opens her eyes, Sid tells the girl that he broke the curse that was eating her alive. The girl has no memory, so she asks what curse did this to her, and Sid explains that a curse was cast on her by a demon, which turned her into a rotting lump. But she is skeptical, so to give her proof, he brings out a fiction book, explaining it is about 3 heroes who defeated the demon Diablos and saved the world, and he tells her that the story is true. When she asks about the demon, Sid explains that the cult of Diablos is trying to revive the demon, so he is on a mission to stop the cult and introduces himself as Shadow. Since the cult only comes out at night, he lurks in the shadows to hunt them, which makes his creativity skill SS class. Sid transforms into his cape and tells the girl she is a child of the heroes, so he asks the girl if she will join him. Having lost everything after she was cursed and left to die, she pledges her loyalty to her savior. He uses his magic slime to cover her naked body, but he tells her they need more heroes to form an organization since they will be up against powerful leaders, so she will need to find them. He calls the organization Shadow Garden and names the girl Alpha. 3 years have passed, and Sid is now 13 years old. To the world, he is an ordinary dark knight in training. Even while practicing sword fighting with Sister Claire, he purposely loses, but Claire will soon leave for the Midgar Academy for Dark Knights at the royal capital, so a farewell party is organized for her. But on the day of her departure, Claire goes missing, and her room is ransacked. As they search her room for clues, the Baron can't believe they overpowered her, but suddenly his wife tells him to stop making f***ing excuses and find their daughter. Meanwhile, Sid asks Beta, his second follower who is disguised as a maid, about Alpha's whereabouts, and we learn that in these past 3 years, Alpha has collected many members for the Shadow Garden, and the organization has grown rapidly. Beta tells Sid that Alpha is looking for clues to finding Claire, so he asks if Claire is alive, and Beta confirms that she is, but she adds that the kidnapper is a high-ranking official of the cult of Diablos, who believes that Claire is one of the hero's descendants. She takes out a map marked with the locations of their hideouts, but they are not sure where they are keeping Claire, so Sid throws a knife at the map, but even though he misses where he meant to throw it, he claims that Claire is being held there. Beta frowns at the location as there is nothing there, but she gasps and states that the cryptograms were a bluff. She concludes there is a secret hideout at the location he marked, so Sid asks her to contact the 7 Shadows, as they will rescue Claire tonight. At the hideout, Discount Erwin from Attack on Titan has chained up Claire with magic sealing chains. He stomps on her face, but she dodges and gives the credit for her skills to her brother. The captain asks Claire if her brother was the one to heal her when she showed signs of being possessed years ago, but Claire denies it, saying there is no way that boy could have healed her. but he says they will have to investigate her brother, making Claire break her chains and attack the captain. She warns him to stay away from her little brother or he and his family will die, but he clocks her right in the dome and shuts her up. Just then, one of his men arrives and informs the captain that their hideout has been invaded, but the 7 shadows have mowed down every single one of the guards by the time the captain reaches them. He asks them who they are, so Alpha introduces them as Shadow Garden, while the other girls explain they know all about the demon Diablos and the hero's descendants, meaning they have only one mission, to annihilate the cult of Diablos. The captain can't f***ing believe that they know about their secret, so he attacks Alpha, but she manages to slice his chest, so he quickly takes out a jar with red pills and pops one, transforming him and making him even stronger. But he realizes he is no match for Alpha, so he creates a hole to escape. The girls want to go after the captain, but Alpha says the captain is headed straight for him. Meanwhile, Sid is completely lost and wanders around the maze-like tunnels, when suddenly he sees a passage opening. The captain comes out running out of it, but when he sees Sid, he is baffled that Sid could predict his movements. He attacks Sid, but Sid easily blocks the sword with the tip of his own sword. Sid thinks that even though the captain has more magical power than Alpha, he doesn't know how to use it, making the captain attack him like a mad bull, but Sid blocks every attack effortlessly. Finally, it is Sid's turn to attack, and he lands every single attack on the captain, gravely injuring him. The captain feels overwhelmed, thinking this is just like when he fought his teacher in his childhood. He uses his sword to keep him from falling, and says that he doesn't care how strong Sid is, the darkness of the world is much deeper, and he has seen it when he lost his only daughter. To his horror, Sid smirks and says he'll have to dive even deeper then, but the captain has had enough, so he takes all the red pills, turning him into a monster as a huge amount of energy courses through him. He starts attacking Sid again, stating that humans are fragile and worthless, and that is the reality of the world. But Sid blocks his attacks, and he charges his magic, making the captain wonder what the f*** is up with this huge amount of magic, as Sid injures the captain and brings him down. But as he falls, he realizes he is powerless against the darkness, but Sid is not. Sid takes the captain's locket as a memento and admits he was pretty tough for a regular bandit. As he walks away, Sid explains that since Claire's chains were broken, she made her way back home the next day in a very bad mood. Somehow her wound suspiciously healed overnight, and soon, she left for the academy. Sid is eager to visit the Royal Capo and accepts he will have to wait 2 years, but meanwhile, he plans to put Alpha and the other shadows to work. But to his surprise, Alpha says the time has come for them to leave Sid and bid him goodbye. Alpha tells Sid that the Cult of Diablos is an enormous organization that runs on a global scale, so they will have to split up. Sid believes that Alpha and the other girls left because they are all grown up now, and the cult story was a lie to begin with. They must have realized this and didn't want to play along for their entire lives, so they set themselves free, but he doesn't blame them because he had always been on his own, even in his previous life. It has been 2 years since Alpha and the rest of the girls left him. Sid is 15, and on his way to the same academy as Claire's at the Royal Capital, but even during these 2 years, he is still determined to become the Eminence in the Shadow. 7 months into the academy, Sid is proud of his job of becoming a background character, and he skillfully selected 2 true-born background characters, Skell and Pa, as his friends. While traveling to the academy, Skell and Pa remind Sid that he scored the lowest in yesterday's test, so because of their bet, he will have to confess love to the most popular girl in school and suffer her brutal rejection. But surprisingly, Sid was waiting for such an event, as it is an S-tier background character event, and as soon as they reach the academy, they see the girl, Princess Alexia, who is in the middle of brutally rejecting a guy. Story of my life. However, Sid is confident since he practiced all night, so he stands before Alexia as he profusely sweats and stutters, and somehow manages to say that he likes her. He gives himself an A+ as this is the background character he always wanted to be. He waits to be rejected so he can run away in shame, but she agrees to be his girlfriend, saying she has been waiting for someone like him, and Sid can't f***ing believe he somehow got on the rom-com protagonist character arc. The next day, news about Alexia and Sid spreads like wildfire, and he gets dirty looks from all the guys who like Alexia. Even his friends say it is sus, and he is nowhere near the specs that would make him worthy of dating Alexia, so they're pissed because they definitely had a chance. Just then, Alexia arrives at their table and asks to join them, sending a wave of whispers talking about Alexia sitting with lower nobility. She gets served way too much delicious-looking food and says she can hardly finish everything, but Sid won't let this chance go to waste, so he starts eating her food without asking Alexia to try and make her dump him, but she changes the topic and asks if Sid is studying Royal Bushin fencing. He says he is, so she proposes they take the class together, but Sid tries to refuse and says that he is in Section 9, the lowest of all sections. However, Alexia says it won't be a problem as she has already put in a good word for him and shifted him to Class 1, so he shits his pants as they give each other the death stare. Later, Sid joins Section 1, where the advisor is Xenon Griffey, the official royal fencing instructor. He practices with Alexia, but he realizes her attacks never land, her movements are slow, and she doesn't use much magic, but he remembers that the goal of the practice is to review their strokes and counterstrokes, and she is strictly following that, which he admires. Sid finds her techniques perfectly honed, but he thinks they're bland. He remembers that Alexia is shadowed under her sister's image, as her sister has achieved the title of the most powerful Dark Knight in the kingdom. After the fight, Alexia states that Sid has a good fencing style, but hates it because it feels like she is looking at herself, and walks away towards Xenon. She tells him she is now Sid's girlfriend, but Xenon remains unfazed, saying that it doesn't change the fact that they are promised to marry to each other. Sid finally realizes what's going on and why Alexia suddenly said yes to being his girlfriend. After school, Sid confronts Alexia about avoiding getting married to Xenon, which is why she chose a low-class aristocrat she can easily control. Alexia confirms everything he said, so Sid states he has no interest in becoming a part of their controversy, but Alexia says she knows he fake confessed his love to her, explaining that his friends told her everything after she flirted with them. She warns him if the student council finds out how he toyed with her heart, he won't have a single peaceful day at the academy, so Alexia wants him to continue playing the fake boyfriend role until Xenon gives up. However, Sid isn't sure if Xenon will give up that easily, as Sid is way out of her league. But Alexia knows this and says she just wants to buy some time for herself, and she will deal with it somehow. With that, she takes out a gold coin and flips it towards Sid, landing on the ground. But Sid asks her if he looks like the type of person who can be bought with money, so Alexia says yes, and Sid blatantly says she is so f***ing right, thinking that his allowance isn't enough to fund his Eminence and shadow operations, so he desperately needs extra money. Sid decides to follow this rom-com anime arc, and fortunately for him, everyone at school is focused on Alexia having a boyfriend rather than focusing on him. Meanwhile, Xenon has adopted a wait-and-see approach. In public, Alexia acts as if she doesn't care, but behind closed doors, she trash-talks Xenon. To deal with her, Sid adopts a say-yes attitude, agreeing to everything she says without arguing. One day, Sid asks Alexia what is so wrong about Xenon that she doesn't want to marry him, but Alexia says she judges people by their flaws, so the fact that Xenon has no flaws makes it suspicious. There is no human being without any flaws, that is why she has nothing against Sid, who is full of flaws. 2 weeks pass, and Sid continues his rom-com roleplay. While riding the train together, Alexia says that Sid knows the basics of fencing, but nothing more than that, and even though there is nothing extraordinary about it, she can't take her eyes away from it. So Sid asks her what's wrong, as her fencing was unusually aggressive and sloppy that day. Alexia is surprised he noticed, and reveals that she wanted to be as good as her sister Iris all her life, but their abilities were different, which forced Alexia to figure things out on her own, trying to get stronger in her own way, but it didn't go as planned, and she ended up with the title of the Fencer Ordinaire. She thinks Sid's style is the same as hers, so she pitches him, but Sid says he doesn't think it's unfortunate because he likes her fencing style. Alexia remembers Iris had said the same thing to her at the Bushin Festival, where she suffered a humiliating defeat, but Iris didn't understand how pathetic she felt at that moment, so Alexia has hated her sword style ever since. Sid decides to make things about him, telling her he is not a great person, and even if 1,000,000 people die, it wouldn't bother him, but there are things that bother him that others might find worthless. For him, they are the most precious things in life, which is why he likes her fencing style. Suddenly, Alexia draws her sword and points it towards Sid. She asks what he means by that, so Sid replies that he gets f***ing pissed when people diss the things he likes. The train arrives at the station, so Alexia puts her sword back in the sheath, bidding him goodbye and making Sid feel it is the end of his unwanted relationship. The next day, Sid is back to being the background character with his background character friends. They apologize to him for ratting him out and beg him not to hold it against them, but Sid doesn't care, so they immediately ask Sid how far he got in their 2-week relationship. Sid sighs and says he didn't get anywhere, which makes his friends grumpy, so they call him a little bitch. As they approach the school gates, Sid spots Xenon with 2 other guards standing at the entrance. But when they see Sid, the guys surround him and his friends, and Xenon tells Sid that Alexia did not return to the dorm last night. The Night Order has started investigating it as a potential kidnapping, so since Sid was the last person to have been in contact with her, he has been named a top suspect and is required to come in for questioning. Sid glances around him and finds the knights everywhere, ready to draw their swords, so he raises his arms and surrenders, realizing he is f***ed. And that brings us to the end of this episode of the Eminence Indiana Shadow. Till next time.